Oh my gosh, I would tell anyone, if you want to do something, like, you just have to jump in and take the risk.
Introducing Margaux Miller, world famous community builder and MC.
Imagine right now all the energy you're spending on your day job, to whoever I'm speaking to here. Imagine that spent on the thing you really want to do. It's going to grow.
Creating community for literally people around the world.
Yeah.
How hard is that? Like,
yeah, super hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is a job that you have to do every single day. With community, you have to be always working on it. A lot of what I talk about on stage is how to make better connections online. Unfortunately, a lot of people try to just apply standard procedure. There's a really bad mistake people make, which is like having the screen over here, and then, you know, the camera's here, but they're typing over here, taking notes. I'm just taking notes.
Yeah.
You're like, in real life, if I did the whole interview with you, Grant, and I'm over here, like, you're not gonna feel a sense of connection with me. I only found the trust in myself to go and do this thing that I really wanted to do when I just started telling the world that that was what I was doing.
Let's bring in Grant White, portfolio manager
an investment advisor.
Welcome to the Finding Your Wealth podcast.
What this whole podcast is about is redefining the conversation around wealth.
The whole thing is absolutely a bit of a tire fire, in my opinion. I don't like drama, and this stock is surrounded by drama.
Margaux, thank you so much for joining me today. This is awesome. I'm so excited because I have to, like, first of all, bring up Start Podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Because your podcast with your brother was, like, I think literally the first, I think it was the first pod that I actually subscribed to be quite honest.
Yes, what an honor.
Yeah, so like when I saw you agreed to come on, I was just like, this is like a full circle moment for me.
That's amazing.
Yeah, because I literally remember, I have absolutely listened to every episode of your podcast. It was like,
thank you.
Anyway, I just loved it. So thank you for getting me into podcasting. That was like 3
My
or 4
pleasure.
years ago.
It was years ago now.
Yeah.
I think in terms of Winnipeg podcasts, there weren't really a ton happening at that time. You know, had we stuck with it, maybe we'd be having a different story. But we did wrap it up a few years back now to take on a different journey. But it's a fun experience. You get to meet so many interesting people, have these really deep conversations. Totally. I'm sure you're seeing that on the other side of the coin now.
Yeah.
Now it's fun for me to be on the other side of the table.
Well, it's I appreciate it because, like, I think I agree with you. Like, through this experience of doing the Finding Your Wealth podcast, I've been talking to such a wide range of people, and that was the goal behind this whole thing. Is I was kind of explaining before we start recording here, but it's like, this is not a money podcast, it's not an investing podcast. This is really I want to share people's stories of how they find freedom in their lives, and whether they're there yet or not, or what path they're on to achieve it. And so we've had, like, CEOs of big companies on, but we've also had people who are just trying to figure it out, and everything in between. And I'm really excited to have you on because I think you have such a unique journey that, like, a lot of, especially Winnipeggers, maybe don't even think about taking on, like all the traveling and the working remotely and all the stuff that you've done. So I won't spoil the story because I want you to tell the story, but I'm excited to have you on. So thanks again for joining me.
Yeah, thank you.
So I always like to start with just a really simple question. I'll share my answer to the question as well. But we just like to start with, like, a simple, like, rating out of 10, how you're feeling right now in terms of your level of wealth, which we define as freedom here. So 10 being you're utterly free, you do what you want, when you want, with who you want, kind of thing, and 1 being you have no freedom in your life. You're constantly, like, told what to do, or you're completely constrained. So where do you feel you are right now?
My gut instinct is 8.
Oh, good. Yeah. That's pretty
I think
good.
it's, like, pretty strong, but I think there's always room, and we can dig into it because I have things right away that I'm thinking of. But don't want to spoil the flow of the conversation. But
what's your number
8.
1 thing that would get you higher? Let's start there.
You know what's funny is, I know this is not a wealth podcast, but the number 1 thing that I think would get me to 9 or 10 is just a bunch of money. Because I think I'm at a point where I have so much of the other things in, like, really, really good spot. But there is a certain heightened experience in life that you can have if you don't, like, technically have to work. Like, if you can just fall back on a pile of money and it's in retainer there for you.
Totally.
Then, like, yes, you can do all these things. You can take more risks. You can just, like, you could take a year off. You could sit all summer and do nothing, or do not nothing, but do all those other things that are different kinds of freedom, right?
Yeah.
If you had this backer behind you that allowed you to do that. So I'm in a really good place. I'm doing all the other things I think that give me freedom in really amazing ways. And so I am, like, I'm happy with an 8.
Yeah.
I think a 9 or 10 for me is, like, long term. Like, I don't think it's even something attainable right away unless I magically become some kind of celebrity, but you never know.
Well, I hear you're big in Czechia.
I'm big in Czechia. Check it out. Check it out in Czechia. Yeah.
I think that's you bring up an interesting point, because we've covered that with like some other people in the past. Like, so we had Jason Brooks on, for example, and he's a performance psychologist. He talked about the constraints that get in the way of people living free, and certainly like finance is one of them, like money is one of them that gets in the way. But there's actually a lot of other constraints, and it's actually, so in my mind, the money one's the easy one. It's not that it's simple always, or it's not that it can happen overnight, but it's actually the easier one. If you have like the mindset, and like you have like, you're doing things and you don't have fear about doing things, then those are the things that actually, I think in his words and in mine, are the harder ones to kind of figure out. So
I feel really lucky, because I do feel like a lot of people have that struggle. For example, when I started working remotely like years back now, I was really, it's that opportunity and being prepared, this luck kind of idea, right? Are you taking advantage of the opportunity in front of you? That is a bit lucky, but because you're prepared. I had all that, and so I ended up in this role working for a global company where I was working totally remotely. I could work anywhere in the world, and I was getting an American salary. I'm Canadian, of course. We're both here in Winnipeg. But so I had this really nice place to be in. And during that period, I remember friends complaining about their jobs, being like travel they didn't want to do. It was like, rural Manitoba, or just like being, feeling like they were constantly at the whim of like what their team needed and just like stressed out. I remember saying to them, can't you work remotely? Like, couldn't you just come with me to wherever? Like, do you really physically need to be in this office you're going to every day? And they didn't have a good reason to say no, but you could see that they felt they had to say no. Like, there was a mental blocker, to your point, that they were facing. It was like, well, it must be nice for you, I can't do that. And you're like, but have you asked to do that? Have you put things in place to do that? But people don't take those steps because there's this like wall that there's no solution to get over or around. But there actually is, of course, right? We know there is when you're looking at it from an outside lens. And if things are that bad and you're stressed out and frustrated all the time, then maybe actually changing jobs is another option. But that's also a scary option, right? So I do feel fortunate that I got into this position with this global company that let me work from anywhere. I'm not there now, and we can talk about what I'm doing now later. It did get me on this new mindset. It was almost like a total switch. I always knew that I wanted to be able to work remotely. I remember being at Oktoberfest in Germany, or not, I wasn't at Oktoberfest, pardon me. I was there 2 weeks before it. And I had to go home because I had to be in the office. My job required me to be in the office. But it didn't actually require me in the sense of like literal need. So I'm there 2 weeks before Oktoberfest, realizing like, if I just had a remote job, I could totally stay and work here. I'd be equally as productive, but I'm not allowed, quote unquote, right? So I went home, never went to Oktoberfest, and just felt like, what a silly thing. I should change what I'm doing. This is crazy. But I still didn't change it. I didn't know how. And then years later, I got into this global remote role and then went, oh, this is how. But it was, lucky that I worked for a company that gave you all those allowances. There's many places do not give that to you. So I totally acknowledge that there was some like a win that I got there. But as soon as I was there, I went, oh, I can never go back. And then years later, I was invited to speak at a conference where they brought me to Oktoberfest. I worked remotely the whole week. It was like full circle moment. Going like, and I got VIP Oktoberfest because I was speaking at this conference that's called Bits and Pretzels, and they're involved in like Oktoberfest. It's like they do it at the same time on purpose. People from all over the world, and went like, oh, this is what I was trying to do back then, but didn't know how to get here. And it's just like this barrier. We don't know how.
No, and it's so was that at TopTal?
Yeah, I was at TopTal.
Okay,
yeah, exactly.
Cool. And so this is from your LinkedIn. So this was so you were the head of community there, if I got that right. So your job literally was to create community, and there's and I'd heard of TopTal before, actually looking.
Yeah, people use it in Winnipeg too. People use it all over the world. They were in 140 countries. Yeah. So like, so there's obviously a lot of people working all over the world remotely there. And you're head of community. What's that like? Because I mean, like that's like literally trying to help. Like community is such a big part of freedom. Like it's a necessity, right? Yeah, we talk about social freedom, right? Like if you're really looking into like what are the different kinds of freedom, social freedom is one of them, which means like, do you have the time to spend with your friends and family, and are you present, and do you have a community, and does that fuel your mental health and other aspects, right? And we know it does. So the work that I was doing there, by the time I was gone, my title was the Global Director of Community. So I had a team around the world in 6 or 7 different countries. Our job was to make all of the users of our service at TopTal, so they're a big like talent marketplace, so freelance tech on-demand tech contractors basically. So you could hire one to do your website tomorrow, or something way more complicated.
Right.
They had very, very, very smart, like talented people who just wanted to work on like a freelance basis, right? So they would use someone like TopTel who connects them to clients. So our job was for all of those super amazing technical people all over the world, picture like 20,000 tech people in 140 countries.
Right.
Our job was to make them feel a sense of belonging, a sense of connection to each other and to TopTel, so that they kept like coming back to us, making friends within our ecosystem, and then, you know, being able to further their career as a freelancer, which is a word that maybe they wouldn't use, but I'm not there anymore.
Yeah.
You know, like a on-demand contract expert.
Yeah.
So then it was things like managing programming or creating programming for people to like find that connection. Maybe that's online mentorship, virtual mentorship. It was managing and owning big chat spaces. So, you know, moderating chats, like 300 different areas. If you love 3D printing and you're in, you know, Portugal, and I love 3D printing and I'm here in Canada, we could meet.
Yeah.
And otherwise we would never meet, right? But it's like TopTel had all these really smart, talented people from all over the world that had these similar interests around like tech and creative outlets within that. And so we were able to connect them. Also, you know, events, we did online events and in-person events. So all these things that helped form this sense of belonging and connection, which is really amazing, because now really my role is as a community and connection expert. And through that knowledge and expertise I have, I'm able to like, deliver it typically in the form of speaking, keynote speaking, and emceeing stages around the world, because from the stage I can also help form that connection and community for people at these events. And then I do some consulting too, but it was really like such an amazing place to be, to see how social like wealth is so important. There's so many people around the world now talking about loneliness, right?
Yeah.
Even like during the pandemic, the UK had a loneliness minister in place, or a leader for loneliness.
Yeah.
The work that we were doing felt like we were chipping away at that, like helping people that were otherwise maybe like behind their laptop by themselves because they didn't work in a normal, you know, company environment. They were working as, you know, freelancing their time, contracting their time. So they were really kind of part of a team sometimes, but often felt alone, or physically they worked alone.
Right.
You know, how do you make those people find friendship within their own, you know, likes and dislikes, and within their own interests?
Interesting. Are you familiar with like blue zones? Have you ever come
Yeah.
across that? Yeah, because like what you're describing is like I've done a bunch of like reading and watching of documentaries on blue zones in the last year, just because I became interested. I got caught up with Dr. Peter Attia.
Really?
I don't know if you've read any of his stuff, but like I got caught up with his stuff, and then I worked my way through blue zones and all that stuff. But what you're describing to me sounds so familiar to like some of the
ties in.
Yeah, some of the key lines that are important in a blue zone, or like helping people live better lives, right? So
yeah, we know, and that's why like some of these people, you know, make fun of like old folks' homes, and that name is like not great. But there are like elderly living communities,
right?
And take a look at them if you're interested in where you're going later in life, because they're not this like place you go to live the end of your life.
No.
There are these like amazing places that actually help people live longer if they're designed correctly. So, you know, look into them. But things like, you know, down in Florida, there's like the largest, you know, like senior living community or whatever in the world or something. And it's in Florida. And it's like every single corner has like tennis courts, community centers. Every single night there's dances. Every single night. A live band in like a grandstand circle performing all kinds of music. Every night's different. And every single night you can go dance if you want to. There's all these social things that they do. And then there's the community centers within these like designed communities. Everything's like walkable. People have golf carts to get around. But all of that is designed so intelligently, because then you're literally more spry, more mentally aware, happier, like more fulfilled. You have this social wealth. And as we get older, it's so important.
Yeah, I love that. I mean,
but it's always important.
And I can, and I think it's often overlooked. I mean, our society here is working against a lot of the things that make people healthy. Like you think about like city design even, and like all that stuff. And we could talk for hours on that, but I find that so fascinating. So I kind of want to dive in a little bit, because you've made some big shifts in the last couple of years, it sounds like, and I've followed along. But like, so you're at TopTel, you have this like what I would describe as like a dream job for a lot of people. It sounds that way, and you're you work remotely, and you like I saw like again from afar as I'm watching you traveled all these amazing places and do all these amazing things. Kate, I want to just ask one quick question on that before we move forward, though. So you're head of community, you're creating community for this global, like, literally people around the world.
Yeah.
How hard is that? Like,
yeah, super hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oftentimes, like, I'm brought in to, help with strategy or help explain, community to an audience somewhere and how they can do it better.
Yeah.
But the bottom line of, what I'll share in really honest conversation is that it is a job that you have to do every single day. Like, you can't, with certain systems and processes, you can build something and then you can let it run, right?
Yeah.
With community, you have to be always working on it. So if you cut your community team, which a ton of people have done in the last 5 years since the, tech changes crisis back, years back there, then you will lose that sense of connection amongst your users, members, team, whatever it is, because it is something you have to continuously work on, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it'd be like saying we don't have to continuously talk to people that we work with. Like, of course you do,
Right.
It's like to continue to have that sense of connection. If you run a community really, really well, if you've designed it so well and you've really put all these tools in place and you have community leaders and moderators and all this stuff that are from the community, it can kind of run itself. And that's when you've really succeeded. Like, if I ask a question in a forum and 10 people answer and they've got the right answer, and so the team doesn't actually have to answer, wow, that's amazing, right? You've done something right. That's where you really want to get to.
Yeah.
But to maintain that and to have those people still want to lead and represent your organization, there's so many things that you still need to do right for those people to want to keep backing you and being those advocates and being those voices of your community, right? Because they're most often doing that at no pay, right? People are doing it just because they love your brand, right? Brand advocacy.
Yeah.
So community ties in with a lot of other departments, right? Of course, with what I just said, you might be thinking, oh, it ties in with marketing really closely. It also, depending on how it fits in the organization, ties in closely with sales, because that, those kind of answers and support help people buy. If you're like, does this fit this way? A bunch of people answer, of course, now I'm going to buy the sweater or whatever, right? So there's if it ties in with sales. There's so many pieces to it. At TopTel, we were really lucky because the community itself was to do with engaging the freelancers that were already in our network. Yeah. So we weren't focused on acquisition. So it's a really fun type of community to do because you're trying to form this connection amongst people that have already to some degree bought into your system, your company, that lifestyle. And then you could really focus on the people that were your contributers that were already in, which is really nice. It's a nice space to be in.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So what do you think?
But it's hard, bottom line.
Obviously we're in an interesting time. We're, a few years post-pandemic now. Companies have made a lot of changes. Organizations have made a lot of changes, and now they're changing in some ways back. And just this week, I think Google now is basically forcing a bunch of their employees back to the office 3 days a week. So what do you think of all that? What do you think of what companies and organizations are doing today? And do you think it's right? Do you think it's just depends organization by organization?
Yeah. I totally understand the value of in-person connection.
Yeah.
A lot of what we've just been talking about ties in with that. But I also believe that a lot of organizations who came back and said, remote work doesn't work for us, it's not, people aren't doing their work, people aren't connecting, whatever, we feel disconnected, is because they didn't put enough intentionality behind setting up systems and expectations on how to engage online. A lot of what I talk about on stage is how to make better connections online.
Right.
Whether that's your networking connections, but also just team connections, a sense of community, a sense of belonging. How do you do that? And unfortunately, a lot of people tried to just apply standard procedure, we have a meeting at 10, show up at the meeting at 10.
Right.
But no one got into the mindset of what does that mean for blocking out other household distractions when you are at home? What is that expectation? Even just as simple as if I'm talking to you on a video call right now, it's very hard to look in your eyes, right?
Right.
A lot of times, there's a really bad mistake people make, which is having the screen over here, and then the camera's here, but they're typing over here, taking notes. I'm just taking notes.
Yeah.
You're in real life, if I did the whole interview with you, Grant, and I'm over here, you're not going to feel a sense of connection with me. It just doesn't work right. It's these simple human things. There's intentionality behind what we have to do, and that's obviously such a small example. Right. But there's all of these ways you can design better meetings, better interaction. in person, whiteboarding together. That's a great exercise, right? We can whiteboard, we're interacting. It feels like a collaboration. Collaborating is a huge tool for community building, right? If we're leading toward the same goal and we're participating together, we're driving towards something together. That's why this collaboration kind of exercises work really well. So take a simple one like brainstorming. We're on a whiteboard. Well, there are tools online to do that. There's Miro and other things where you can whiteboard digitally with your faces there, a timer, the whiteboard where each of us can put sticky notes and stuff. You can do that online.
Yeah.
But instead, people just skip the brainstorm. Like, just emailing me your ideas, and then we'll put them all together, and I'll share with you which one we're picking.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, you wouldn't have done that in person. Why are you doing that now? There are other options, right? And so it's just this intentionality behind it.
Yeah.
Clearly, I get worked up. But
No, this is great. I love the passion.
I totally understand that for some people it's not working.
Yeah.
I'm not faulting those people. I know the value of being in person. But the thing is, now with expectations, especially millennials and many people in the workforce overarchingly, our expectation now is certainly for a lot more give and take on our time freedom.
Yeah.
Can get into that, our time wealth.
Yeah.
And so if you're forcing me into the office numerous days a week, like in my case, I won't accept that job. And so now you miss out on my global knowledge and expertise. Like, maybe you'll find someone else that's equally as good that wants to be in person. Amazing.
Yeah.
But over time, people in person, like, if it's not your style of working, because for some people it is, they've chosen this whole time to be in person. But for many of us that have this expectation now of more time freedom, there's like a resentment that starts to happen. There's a like change in work commitment while you're at your desk. You know, people still are scrolling Facebook at their desk.
Yeah.
You know, in fact, I think that my time during the day wasted was way higher when I was in an office than when I'm at home, because there's distractions, people talking to you, like all those obvious things we talk about are real.
Right.
And so there's a certain trust and like intentionality and expectation that you have to set with your team. And if you have a good company culture with really clear vision that's communicated to your whole team, and not just vision of like what you're working on, but the company's values, and all of it is really, really clear, you should be able to have people work anywhere successfully.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think it's interesting. I mean, my point of view on it, like, I'm very much an in-person, like, person.
Totally, yeah.
So, like, you know, throughout the pandemic, even when this place was empty, I preferred to be here, even if I was on my own.
Yeah.
And that was fine for me, because I like to separate, like, you know, home and work.
Yes.
You know, I have 2 young kids, though, too, so that is also really
Right,
helpful
which
for
is
me.
why, like, situationally, sometimes it totally makes sense.
Yeah, totally. So, but I also, I think it's important that we recognize and we get a little bit better at understanding how each individual works. And I've heard your good friend Jane actually talk a lot about this too, about like, and she and I have had good conversations about it.
Yeah.
About like, you need to empower like the leadership on teams to kind of make that, versus like having an overarching role that affects an entire organization, you know?
Yes.
So, and I think that's
Let
kind of
people like trust their individual employees accordingly, and then and also just roll it out based on what makes sense in the like busyness and connectivity that team requires during a certain period of time even. Like, you could make it where during the summer you can, but during the tax season you can't.
Right.
Like, sure, that would make sense depending on the company and function that you are in.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So being a little bit more surgical, or a little bit more like that. I find that really interesting. One of the things when I'm hearing you talk about all this is like, I think about how lucky we are to live in a place too, where you can make choices
where
around,
we can like have this line in the sand and still have a job.
Well, and if you don't like what you're doing, you do something else, kind of thing. And I think
Yeah.
that we're super fortunate from
You're
that
right.
perspective. So tell me about making the change to what you're doing now. Like, what prompted that? Why did you why'd you want to do that? Like, how's it going?
Yeah, there's many factors to the decision, of course.
Yeah.
You know, that wall we were talking about earlier, where sometimes we feel like, I want to do that thing, but there's no way of getting there. Like, how do you actually do that? I never hesitated to believe that I could do it, that I could be a speaker for a living. Or, like, I always was like, people would ask you your dream job, and I'd be like, I want to be Oprah and just like interview the most interesting people all the time, and that's my job. I get to just meet amazing people and interview them all day, you know? Or, if someone was like, if you were playing those games, people were like, would you like to be famous one day, right? You know, yes or no kind of games. I would say yes, but only if it's for my brain. Like, I don't want to be famous for vapid reasons. I want to be famous because I am having very interesting intellectual conversations with people, or because I've discovered something, or because I'm sharing knowledge with the world that's going to help other people. Like, I thought, only if I'm famous for something to do with knowledge. And so I always knew that. But I had this wall for sure that existed in terms of, but how? Like, from Winnipeg. No, I'm not like already on this path of like being an actor or whatever. I don't understand the industry. Like I don't know what's happening. You know, so I could maybe try, but it'd be like telling your family that you're going to be a famous actor one day. Like you don't just become that. That's so many people fail. There's a lot of rejection in those kind of industries, right? So, and I thought, I don't have enough knowledge. You know, there were all these barriers that just stopped me from even taking that step forward.
Right.
I ended up having a lot of nice things all at once that like allowed me to make that move. So, well, some bad things, but also like that made me get to that point. So at the time at TopTal and in the world of tech, which I was working in, I was like American tech company job. Everyone I knew in community teams were being laid off. It was like I was watching it happen. They were cutting like full community teams. TopTal had been through 2 layoffs already. There was big talk of like another huge one. You could start to see things happening. And this is like, you can find this online. You can see, this is not confidential information, and all these companies, this stuff was happening. So I'm like looking around at all this going, my job's not going to be here soon. And if it is, it's going to be with a super cut down team. Right. Like I'm going to have no team members and I'm going to be the only individual contributor doing like so much more than I'm doing now and not enjoying it anymore because it's not at all the same thing. Right. So there was this risk in your mind. We were still just moving forward, but that was definitely on your mind. Right. And we'd already lost team members in the last few years and stuff like that. So then at the same time, I was fortunate enough in 2024 to do a TEDx talk in Winnipeg. Right, yeah. And my friend Jade, who you mentioned earlier too, we got to do it together, which was a really great experience. That's cool. Do a whole podcast just about that. It was a great experience. But we worked really, really hard. And in the end, the talks all came out around the same time in July, but mine didn't come out because it had been selected for editor's pick, which is like a special section where they put more marketing behind your talk when they release it, so it gets way more views automatically. Very cool. Which was amazing because we had worked super hard and that was the goal, right? Like the goal was to get this good visibility. So they put it out and it's starting to do well. And then I get word from TED that they're going to actually put it on TED.com. Which is like, this happens to 1%.
That's the real deal.
That's the real deal. Yeah. And also a dream I had since I was a child. Because my mom used to use TEDx Talks and TED Talks in her classroom with her students. She was a teacher. Okay. And so my brother and I, watched them from a young age. Very cool. And I always thought, those people, they're amazing. Like they're the smartest in their field. They're, wow, how amazing if you could be like that smart and that, dedicated to a certain craft that you get to do a TED Talk. And then I get told it's going to be on TED.com. Which means then your name is indexed, your page is indexed. Whereas otherwise with TEDx, you're just on YouTube. Okay. So it's still amazing. You can get a ton of views. You can use the video for your own stuff, whatever. But getting on TED.com is this like extra level. And then they put all this additional marketing behind it. So that happened on the same week that TopTal started to do like these deep layoffs. And I had always wanted to do speaking. I had already at this point too, like behind the scenes, because I was working globally remotely, I could go take a speaking gig in Prague and then do the 1-day event and speak, and then the rest of the week I could just work remotely like a normal week. Right. So I didn't have to take off major chunks of time to do these speaking opportunities. So I was already building up my persona a little bit, but always with a job. And actually I thought a lot of the time that I was being selected to speak because of the job title I had, because it's global director of community for a big huge company, starting to be like a household name kind of company. I thought that was kind of why I was getting it. So all that was happening. The TED Talk came out. And we lost a family member at the same time. Oh, no. Yeah, it was awful. But also, like, all of these things happening at the same time, I kind of went, if I'm going to take a risk, and it felt like a big risk, and we'll talk about it in a minute because it ended up not being that big of a risk, but it sure felt like it with that wall in front of you and all those barriers, all those blockers in your mind. I went, this is the time to jump in with 2 feet. Like, with the momentum of a talk on TED.com, if you want to be a speaker, when are you ever going to get more momentum? This is and I had already been speaking in different countries in the world, so I had these things I could put on, like, my speaker resume kind of thing. And so I just was like, this is so silly. Like, I'm just going to do it. And let's talk about wealth, because you know what I told myself over and over? So I'm not going to mention like what I was actually making or whatever, but I was working for an American company, good, like getting paid in American dollars, nice salary, all these things. And I was speaking a little bit here and there. So I had like a side hustle essentially. Yeah. My narrative to myself, truly, and still till like recently, was if I make $50,000 this year, and that's all I make as a speaker because I don't know what I'm doing yet and I don't get enough work and whatever, okay, like I could live, that would be fine. And I thought to myself, if you said to me, Margaux, you can make this big number and be working, like hustling all the time, like working crazy hours, trying to like focus your time on 2 different things, all this stuff, but working like a 9-to-5 job, which is always more than 9 to 5 when you're in like a senior leadership role, right? So working this like whatever 50-hour-a-week job, but making good money and still allowed to travel or whatever. But or you could make 50,000, but you're getting paid to speak and travel the world, and your travel's for free because they pay for that on top of the 50.
Yeah.
I would have totally said, give me the 50.
Yeah.
And so I did have like an understanding in my brain and a braveness to say that time freedom, because if you're making only 50 and it's just for speaking, that means you probably didn't do that many gigs, which means you've got time in between. That means you can spend the summer at the lake here in Manitoba. You know, you can go to your family events, your friend who's had a baby, you can go for a walk during the day when they're on mat leave or whatever, right? Like you can do all those things in this scenario over here, the second one, right? Yeah. And so I went, okay, well, even if I just do that for a year or 2, so I'm not putting anything really in my savings, I'm like just gonna do that. Like this is the total narrative that I was going through. I would be good, that'd be fine. I could do that. And worst case, I'll go back to a traditional job, right? Yeah. You know, I ended up doing it and taking that risk. And of course, now we're sitting here with me, like having in the last 2 weeks events in 2 different countries. And the next, I'm about to leave for a month and do another 4 different countries. And so it's rolling and it's really exciting. And I'm totally living that life I want to live. And I will make more than 50. But I needed to be okay with the like worst case scenario, which I guess it could have been worse than that. But in my mind, I was like, of course I'd make at least that, right? Like that'd be okay. But I had to give myself this kind of narrative. And then the thing is, once I did it, I went, there really wasn't that big of a risk there. Like worst case, you get another job. I knew I was, you know, pretty employable. Well, the community market is tough, like I was saying. So there was that fear, but I'm like, I could do something. Like someone will hire me for something, right? And then the dream of doing the thing that you always wanted, like the dream job, was actually the speaking stuff, right? So even though this job was so great that I had, and when I first got it with TopTel, it was a dream job, totally. It was remote and good pay and good travel and all those things. But what I really wanted to do was like represent myself and share this knowledge and help people and, you know, speak on these stages and bring energy and make events. Like there's so many events I had gone to where the MC, like the host, the master of ceremonies, was like a total dud, and you just think like, why is this person up there? Like I could do that better. Do this, and now I'm doing it, and I'm helping all these events, and I'm bringing the energy, and people love it, and it just feels amazing.
It's so good.
Yeah, it just feels like I finally like hit on the right thing, and it was worth that like risk. But the risk was really just your own mental blockers.
I think that is such a fascinating. I mean, I faced it. We've all like kind of gone through it at different points in time. I've always had in my head that. If somebody else can do it, then I can do it too. Sorry, I shouldn't say I've always had that in my head. I was introduced to that by a friend of mine, Jason, who I mentioned earlier. Actually, Jason said to me, because you know we talk a lot about like who do you look up to in the world, and I've always been somebody who sought out mentors and you can call them heroes, but it's really more mentors to me. Even if I don't know them, I think about it like I look at them from afar and say, oh, I'd like to do something similar. I'd like to pick their brains on it. But anyway, so his whole thing was basically that he introduced me to, this is like 10 plus years ago. He's like, well, if they could do it, why can't you? Like, it doesn't matter who it is. It could be Richard Branson, could be, you name it. It's like, they did it. Why not you? And you talked about Oprah. Like, did you have that mindset too?
No, I think I had like, I think the difficulty for me was all those people I was looking at, to your point, those big names, they weren't people here. And so I think you do need a bit of like a mentor or a person to look up to that is actually in like a tangible distance away from where you are. I feel like now I would love to speak everywhere in Winnipeg and tell this story in a way. Like maybe I need to create a keynote of like this, because I do think that if I would have seen someone like me, which just sounds so like, I don't know, maybe conceited to say or something, but it's like, I just mean like, if I would have seen someone from Winnipeg who's still young, who's like out doing this interesting thing, speaking for a living, traveling the world 10 years ago, or even 20 years ago when I was young, right? I think that would have been so amazing. But instead I was just seeing famous people on TV that came from LA. And I'm like, well, that's a totally different, like we don't have that here. There's no one I could just like have as a real mentor or talk to. I still to this day know very few people who are speakers for a living in Winnipeg. It's only in the last year I joined the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers, it's CAPS for short. And they have a chapter in the Prairie region, and there are amazing people in Winnipeg that I have now met that have been super generous with their knowledge and time to allow me to like see that other people are doing it, and they're doing it long-term career, not this like, if I just do this for 1 or 2 years and see what happens, like it's their career. They've done it for 30 years. And so there is this possibility that you can do it too, you know?
Do you think that's important? Like you went all in. Do you think that's important?
Yes, actually. I do think you have to go all in. I of course had been first building on the side, so we will give that caveat.
Sure.
I had already been speaking, but it was like mostly speaking for free or for travel costs, or like very low fee. It was, here and there. Like, of course, I had a job. I couldn't just be speaking every week, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then because you have to prep for those talks and everything, right? Like, there's tons of work. It's not just the 2 hours you're there, right? There's tons more work. So that's where like some people don't have the time freedom to do both, right? Especially if you have kids, a family, like it's really tough to say to your family, I'm going to work my day job all day and then I'm going to hustle all evening and all weekend to get ready for XYZ, for this talk I'm doing or for this, product I'm building or whatever. I'm going to do it evenings and weekends. That's a lot. It's okay if you're single, no kids, no pets, know, which is what allowed me to build what I was doing. Like,
sure,
I am all those things. Let's just be really honest, right? Like, someone might be listening to this thinking like, did this woman also have all those things? Like, the answer is no. Like, I had the space and freedom to do all that because I didn't have those things at home to combat what I was able to give to the focus of building this thing on the side.
Right.
So I did feel like I was in a safer place to jump with 2 feet, but the difference when I jumped in with 2 feet was astounding. The doubt existed because I hadn't focused on it in full. As soon as I did, I was getting bookings. People were there. And like, I still haven't totally figured it out. There's going to be mistakes I make. There's going to be months where I have no events and go, oh my God, did I make the wrong decision? Right? Right now we're in like spring conference season. So right now it's busy.
It's gravy.
But like summer, when I don't talk to anyone for 2 months, I'm going to think, oh my goodness, did I make the worst decision ever? Right? So there will be ups and downs like any business. Essentially, I'm building a business, building a startup kind of, right?
Yeah.
So there will be ups and downs. But when I jumped in with 2 feet, it was wild, actually, the difference it made. And totally now I think, oh my gosh, I would tell anyone, if you want to do something, like, you just have to jump in and take the risk. Because then you're spending your whole day thinking about that thing, building that thing. Like, imagine right now all the energy you're spending on your day job, to whoever I'm speaking to here, imagine that spent on the thing you really want to do. It's going to grow. Guaranteed. There is no version in which your $1,000 a month on your side project or whatever doesn't become $5 if you are every single day focused on that thing. Or way more, right? Whatever it is. Like, there's no way.
I think that's the challenge with the side hustle culture, though, is like that fear gets in the way of people going full on into it. And for a lot
sure,
of reasons,
I had it too. And the only reason I did it was because I had all of those pieces in place at the right time, and layoffs were like looking over my shoulder at the exact same time. Like, it was like I was pushed into it, basically. So I'm not some like magic hero that just was so brave, right? It's like I had a lot of factors that put me in that spot.
No, and circumstance is important, but like, and you're right. I mean, like, it's like it depends on somebody's life. Because I mean, I get it. If you're a single parent at home and you got 2 kids or something like that, you might have to make a different choice. You might have a different priority or something like that.
It'll take you longer. You have to build it on the side for more years than I did, or whatever.
But no, I think you bring up a really interesting point. So we talked briefly about mentors and mentorship. Who is important to you in this journey? You talked about your mom, like, sharing TED Talks and stuff. And I love that. But who's been important to you on this journey and helped you to get to where you are today and where you're going?
That's an interesting question. I don't know that I can point to like one person, which is intriguing because I think sometimes we do have this like one inspiring person. There's tons of people, I would say, that are helpful on this journey and from different angles. So definitely my parents. From a young age, my parents taught us that we could do anything, essentially. And part of that teaching wasn't in necessarily like verbiage all the time, but in action. When we were 14 and 15, my parents took my brother and I to live in Australia for a year. We did a family exchange program where there's like, we have this program in Canada where teachers, because they teach the same like, Queen's curriculum, or King's, I guess now, but they can switch over, so you can like find a match. So when I was 14, I lived in Australia for a year. Like, there were these things, these actions that they did to show us, like, look, it's hard, of course. It must have been super hard to like get all the proper insurance and change the house and whatever. And people lived in our house and we went and lived in their house, like a family swap, but we all went. Not just our parents didn't stay home with someone else, someone else's kids. So we got to do all these things that just like, first of all, that gave us like worldliness, opened our eyes to that. We traveled also internationally with them when we were young and skiing and stuff too. But and then, so they always instilled in us this, you can speak to anyone at all ages, like you can meet new people in different areas, and it's great, it's fine, it actually is good for you, So all those things, like whether they were subtle or not, we got all those things. So that I think was huge, because then later in life, you're like, yeah, I can take this risk. I also have these amazing, stable family members that I'm really fortunate to still have here in Winnipeg. So in a way, it's also a bit of a fallback plan, right? Like if you know you have someone that will let you live in their house if things really burned down, right? Like if things really go wrong, then there is a safety in your subconscious that you have when you're taking this risky decision, right? So I think that is one piece of it. The other side that I'm really fortunate about, and this is like, again, this could be probably a whole other podcast, but I am a very driven woman and am lucky to have found a community of other similar like-minded women. Some of those major supports come from the fact that there's a group of us that are close friends. You've talked about some of them here today, where we don't intend to have kids, and we've all been single most like off and on for a lot of our like adult working friendship and life.
Sure, yeah.
And so therefore, and also some of them are speakers. And so you put all, and we didn't always totally know we were speakers, because some do like training and some do, and I was doing emceeing and whatever, but all those things actually in the world of speaking are considered you're a speaker. Like that's the job title, and you're just a different kind or whatever underneath, right? Yeah. And we didn't really understand that. So we've like grown together and supported each other. And there's a certain like safety and support that comes from knowing that other people understand you for real and like where you're coming from, because there's a lot of pressure on women around relationships and kids. And we're not these like hard-nosed people building our careers and that's why we made those decisions. It's like, no, those are just decisions that made sense to us. Like we always just, or I'll speak for myself, like that maternal instinct just like wasn't there in the same way. And I love kids, actually. I love my friends' kids and my family's kids. But it's just like when it came to like, it wasn't a decision, I'm picking work over those things. Right. But people want to put that on you in society. And so like finding friends that understand that that's not what it is, and that we can drive forward together and we can travel together and do all these things together and support each other. And like going through the TEDx journey of developing that talk and delivering it with one of my best friends, with Jane, who you mentioned, we lifted each other up and pushed each other at the right levels, at the right times. We both ended up getting editor's pick. Like that wasn't an accident. That was because we lifted each other up to that point and understood like why we were both driving so hard to make sure we delivered the talk so well. Amazing. Because it made a difference for us and for our careers. So I think it's like, I don't know that I have looked at mentorship from a space of like this person who's already done it and is so amazing. But I do know that I've had people in my life that have like supported me with the decisions I was making, friends and family, and who were kind of this like also fallback support and there for that, psychological safety, but also literal safety.
I really love that, because I think you're right. Like this common thought of what a mentor is, it's usually somebody who's older than you or who's done it or something like that. But mentorship comes in many forms, and it could be a group of friends that support each other and push each other along the way. And I've always, I'll say always loosely, because again, I hadn't always thought this way, but for a long time I've thought that about mentorship more like a two-way street, where it's not just one person guiding another, it's actually like helping each other out no matter what stage of life that they're in. And I think that's so important. So I appreciate your viewpoint on that, because I think that's different than what a lot of the answers that I would have gotten when I asked that question. So I want to get we're going to close things off pretty soon here. There's a couple of things I did want to touch on though as well as we're closing it out here. So the first thing is the wine and spirit education, because I saw that, and you like it enough to put it on your LinkedIn page too. So
I mean, at one point it made sense to my career. So I was working for a custom wine cellar builder. So they built like the room in people's homes.
Right. Yeah, I remember this.
They're from Winnipeg. They do amazing work around the world, but they're based here. And so that was my first foray into working internationally a little bit, because they were selling in different areas of the world and stuff. And in like a luxury market essentially, because it's these like amazing wine cellars. But so to do my job really well, wine education was something that made sense, because we were building the room the wine goes in. But if someone says, oh, I have this collection of Chateau Margaux, my name, that I'm going to put on this wall, and you're like, oh, cool. It's like, no, you don't realize how expensive those bottles of wine are. Like you have to understand a little bit what the context is of what you're talking about. So that was really fun. Like they put me through wine education as part of my job. I did it at what was Banville and Jones at the time upstairs. They have a like school that you can actually do. Tasting is part of class. But you spit so that you can go home after and you're not drunk every week in class. It was like an 8-week long course. It was like going back to university. It was intense. I had like maps on my kitchen table or on my, like wherever I was studying. You know, you need to know terroirs and grapes and regions, and like it was a lot. I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I haven't been in school in a long time and this is real. Like this is a lot of information. And getting really stressed out. And at the beginning too, thinking I couldn't do it because tasting, you're like, well, you either can taste properly or you can't. Like, I just can't. I don't know. What is this or this? Like, I don't know, you know? Is this wet leaves? Like, I don't know. Should I go outside and taste wet leaves? And they would say, yes, you should. Like, that was the lesson, right?
I love it.
So anyway, it was a lot of fun. It's mostly like a business party trick now, because not a trick, but I can pick a better wine off a menu now than I could before, because I know what grapes grow in what region correctly at the very least. Yeah. So, you know, that's nice. I can like hold my own in wine selection at a restaurant.
I like that. I had to bring that one up because so I'm not an educated wine person. Sure. I like wine. Yeah. And you know, anyway, I like wine. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know enough to be the difference maker on any of those conversations. But I really appreciate when people are passionate about those things, because I'm like, I get it. Like I just like fake it now, Grant. Okay, so I have it. People know. I'm like, let me get this. You can psych me out. Like, I got it. My uncle is a big wine guy. He's he's an Australian. Lives near Penfolds, and so like when I was there, we went to Penfolds, and it was amazing. I'm just like, this is a very nice place. I don't know anything, so like it was just a fun experience. You're like, I'm gonna enjoy this no matter what. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I was snobby for a while, and I've come back down there. Like while I was working there, you get into this, you know, space, but like anything, you know, it levels out once you're not there. That's so funny. Okay, I want to just cut, before we close things off, I've really just two more questions, quick questions kind of thing. So we talked about some of the things that make your freedom. You talked about time freedom. Yeah. You talked about social freedom. Yeah. Obviously financial freedom. Is there anything else that you'd touch on that you would define as like, I need this for me to feel free in my life? You know, I was listening to something recently about the different kinds of freedom that we can have, and different kinds of wealth, I guess, more that we can have. Yeah. And there's two more that apparently make up the structure of what we can look at. And the additional two are your physical, like health, as a form of freedom. Because like when you're 90, if you're not feeling well, you have the time and the money to go to the yacht. But if you can't walk onto it, like you're not going on the yacht, right? So it's like, your physical body, your health is one of them. It's one I think I need to be more careful with. My nutrition is not always amazing, just like a honest podcast here. You know, so especially when you're traveling and you're not like in your space, you don't eat and work out as well. Yeah. So that's an interesting one. But yeah, your body, like to keep thinking about that is super important. And the other one that I really love, which I think I do really care about, well, I do know that I care about quite a bit, but I didn't really think of it as a form of wealth, is the part where I was hesitating, is knowledge, like knowledge wealth. And I think where that comes into freedom is this idea of being a curious person has always been really important to me. Yeah. In fact, I have 3 guiding principles as a human being that I created when I was like 18, and to this day, they're my 3 guiding principles. And they're family, which also encompasses like friends, like people that you love, family, gratitude, and growth. And the growth one can be so many different things, right? But ultimately, to grow, there is a knowledge base that has to do with that, right? Yeah. And so I just didn't totally understand that it was one of these structures of our wealth and freedom. So for example, when it's easy to give the example of when you're elderly. So when you're elderly, if you stop being curious about things, you tend to start to like regress. So it's that point where you go, you know, someone's trying to teach you something and you're kind of like, I'm old enough. This is how it always has been in the world. So I'm still going with that, right? That mentality. We've all heard some version of that from people in our lives or movies or whatever. But that's when you you feel like maybe your wealth is maxed out of like knowledge. But I think that we know that this idea of curiosity and like always learning keeps our mind fresh, keeps us healthy, mentally healthy. And I think like we could have a whole conversation about mental health, but that's a piece that I feel so passionate about continuing to grow. And to me, it's growth in all ways, but a lot of it is like knowledge and understanding, especially in the kind of world that we have where things are changing constantly, where we do need to be like aware of global issues and changes that in people's lives that we may not see all the time because we do live very fortunate lives, right? We've just been talking about this really exciting number 8 that I'm sitting at, in my 8 out of 10 scale of life and freedom. And so
I think we have to keep being curious and building our knowledge wealth, because it also allows you to be more present in every situation that you're in. Like the more that I've been around the world, the more that I have like cultural knowledge wealth, right? And so then I can plug into different situations and be really present and enjoy it, as opposed to maybe feeling awkward or out of place in that space.
Right.
And so I think that there's like a lot of ways we can look at that one, but I think it's one that I'm curious to like think about a little more and what it's meant to me.
Interesting. This is just interesting to me because I had this conversation recently where I was thinking about, and I apologize to my dad if he listens to this, but I was thinking about my dad actually, because, you know, my dad's turning 70 this year. Mm-hmm. And not that he's closed-minded. I wouldn't describe him as that. There's certainly way more closed-minded people in the world. Mm-hmm. But I was trying to explain to him how to use, I think it was ChatGPT or something like that. And I'm like, this is a wonderful tool. Mm-hmm. Because I think he was getting frustrated with Google. And I'm like, actually, like, use like ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever. Yeah. But pick one up and start just using this, because it's way more intuitive to what you're actually doing. Because he's like, I think I'm Googling wrong. And I'm like, I think that's wrong too. But, you know, whatever. But it led me to thinking, and I was chatting with my wife Sam about it.
At least he asked.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah. I'm like, I never want to stop being curious about new things, you know. Yeah. And I think like we often think, oh, I'm too old to figure that out, or it's like, and it's like, I think that's one of those societal things.
Totally.
But I'm like, I don't think it doesn't have to be that. I know that because I've got people in my life who are older than 70 who are not that at all at the same time, but they are probably the outliers who have just kept that curiosity going.
Or they've had like the right social system around them, community around them to get them to that point. Because like my grandparents use WhatsApp with us now. We have a family chat about like when we're having family dinners and stuff. Yeah. And they WhatsApp, which blows my mind. And sometimes often it's all in capital letters, but they still do it.
Doesn't matter.
I don't know why. That's always in capital letters, but they're doing it because there's every generation underneath them, up to like my young cousins in their 20s, that are using it to communicate about family dinners and stuff. And so we're like, it's not that hard. We'll put it on your iPad for you. You're going to start using it. But they would have never otherwise, right? So they had this like social and community, like a family around them that helped them with that knowledge and growth and curiosity. Yeah. So all of these pieces are part of the same puzzle.
Which is probably like super important in like North America, because like, you know, we don't live in these family compounds that sometimes happen in other parts of the world. So we don't get that social interconnection and family. Like we all live in separate places, we all, you know, whatever.
Yeah, so. It's really beautiful actually how a lot of cultures do that. Like there's a lot of families in Winnipeg, they're maybe coming from India, they live with 8 different people in the same house and many different generations. Yeah. And some people here I think look at it and think like, oh, I could never do that. Wow, that'd be so hard having all these people around all the time. But actually it's
I think it's weird.
It's really, maybe they think it's weird just because they don't understand it. But actually if you step back to think about that for a minute,
it makes so much sense.
Like support systems in place, meals together, they're eating really well. So go back to that health and nutrition thing, because someone's making, typically in those households, someone's making like a full robust meal for like lunch and dinner, if not 3 times a day. Because I've spoken to those people, that it's amazing. I'm like, wow, you're taking a lunch break and you've got this whole thing, and like, how amazing. You know, you have babysitters built in sometimes too, quite nice. But also just like the social all the time. You have people to speak to bounce things off of. It's actually kind of amazing and sad at the same time how many of us live by ourselves in like large houses here in cities like Winnipeg, because we have the space and the means to do it, which is fortunate on the one hand but dangerous on the other.
Yeah, totally. I agree. So my last question for you is, what do you think the biggest thing someone can do to find their wealth, like overall wealth? What do you think the biggest thing is?
There's kind of 2 things that came to mind right away. The first is that I only found the like trust in myself to go and do this thing that I really wanted to do that gave me many of those forms of wealth at the same time, right? When I just started telling the world that was what I was doing. So I think there's something in just putting it out there. So even while I was transitioning, I was still at my full-time job. I would say to people, I'm a community builder and an event host or an event MC. And that would be how I would introduce myself. Like I wouldn't say, I'm a community builder at this big company and blah, 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 blah. Oh, and kind of on the side, I also do this thing. Like I stopped, or you wouldn't even say that on the side, right? Unless someone like asked a follow-up. I just started leading with, I'm a community expert and an MC. Like whatever that form of that sentence was, it was right away in the title. Like that was what I was when I introduced myself. Right. You know, and that made such a difference, because you convince your own mind you're that thing, first of all. Yeah. Right? There's a bit of trickery. Yeah. And we can do that to our minds, right? Sure. Mantras and things like that people use, right? So do it with your job. Do it with what you want to do. Stop saying like, I also kind of do this thing, or not even mentioning it. Like make it part of your persona, and it goes so far. And I think you can use that trick with other forms of wealth too. Like, I'm going to save money this year. Like, if you say it out loud over and over, every time you're buying something, like, I'm going to save money this year, so I'm buying this coffee, but I'm going to put this $2 in my pocket and put it in my piggy bank when I get home, or whatever, right? Just start saying it. There is some kind of amazing power in that. So I think that's like the first thing that came to mind, and I've lost whatever my second one was, but it's, you know, I think there's just, I think really the second piece was around what came in that answer, which is just like this trust in yourself that you can do it. It's amazing when you just start to like walk on the path that you want to be on and stop just talking about the path that you want to be on. Yeah. So, you know, I was just saying like talk about it, but I mean talk about it in the way like because you are doing it. Yeah. And I think that there's a beauty in that and there's a power in that, and it totally, like, as soon as you take one step on the path, like you have to just keep taking steps. They can be so small. A really easy example with working out, for example, is don't look at people that are doing all this crazy stuff and this high volume of energy workouts and finding difficulty finding time to do that. Of course you're going to.
Right.
Do 10 minutes every day. Do 5. Start with 5, then 10, then 15. Like, on average, when I'm traveling and busy, I'm working out only 20 minutes a day and I feel amazing. Yeah. The difference of even just committing to that every single day, a 10-minute walk or whatever it is, then all of a sudden it'll be totally fine to go 15 or 12 or whatever. You won't even notice the progression, right? So, but just take the step, do the 5. Don't be like, oh, well, I don't have an hour, so I'm not gonna do it. Right. You have to do the 5 or 10. And it's like such a simple example in working out, but there's examples of that in work, right?
Totally. Yeah, I think, so you bring up two things that I think are super important, this in being intentional about what you want, and then again, having an idea about that and actually thinking about it. And I do encourage a lot of people to write it down, because like when you write it down, you commit to it versus just thinking about it. There's a lot of people who have big dreams in their heads, but they don't actually do anything about it. Yeah. But I think like being intentional about it, and I also think having compassion about it.
For yourself.
Oh, totally. Because you're going to misstep. And I literally just did it this morning. My kids aren't sleeping right now, so I'm on like 4 hours of sleep or something like that. So my workout, my routine is a disaster right now. But I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be compassionate about this. Like, there's no point in beating yourself up. And you're right. It's the same in work too. Like, because my kids aren't sleeping, my execution level, which I try to execute at the highest level and constantly try to improve it.
But you might be able to do a little bit less today or whatever. Yeah. And then tomorrow you have to make it up or whatever. Yeah. But it is, I love that idea of like giving yourself grace and compassion. Yeah. If you beat yourself up mentally, you're not going to do the thing more, right? And so, or it's going to be like your mental health is suffering while you're building your physical fitness or something. It's like, that's also not good. So yeah, it's like, just chip away. And with work, it's the same. So many people are waiting for perfection. I'm hearing them tell me like, oh, I'm going to do what you're doing one day, but I'm like, I'm building this tool and I'm building this thing and I'm building my website. I'm like, why do you need that? Like, people know who you are. Start pitching yourself to the people who already know you and will book you without a website. Like, many people don't look at my website, I'm sure, because they like, someone referred me and they know me and whatever. So it's like, if I waited for that tool to be perfect, like, just take a step. Tell someone you're doing it. They might ask for a website. You say, you know what, mine's under repair right now. Do you want to just do a phone call? They'll probably just do a phone call. Like, just take the step.
Right. Yeah. I think that's so important. Just
before
get
you know it. Yeah.
I love it. Margaux, thank you so much. So when, what's next? Where are you going next?
Yeah, you know what is so amazing with all these things we talked about? My next trip is an event I have in Amsterdam, and my mom has always wanted to go to Amsterdam to see the tulips, so she's coming with me.
Perfect.
Yeah, so I have a couple events in Europe, but the first one's in Amsterdam, and my mom's gonna come with me, and we're gonna see the tulips and do like a mom and daughter trip.
Amazing.
And then I get to interview one of the princes of Denmark. On stage, yes, the brother of the king of Denmark.
Amazing.
And I get to host the stage, and my mom will be there, and we get to see the tulips. So it is totally this, like, I'm getting the family and the work and the freedom, all of it at the same time. I can't believe in a way that that's something that I'm going to get paid to do in the next couple weeks.
Well, congratulations. Thank you so much for sharing all this. I'll look forward to seeing all the pictures of these things, obviously. So please keep sharing.
Make sure I don't like break the rules and like shake the prince's hand in a way I'm not supposed to. But I'll keep you posted.
Sounds good. Where can people find you if they want to find you?
My website is speakwithmargaux.com. I'm also on LinkedIn is my main one, and I share a bunch of tips about community and connection there. So if you want to make better online connections, like, follow me there. Yeah. My full name is Margaux Miller, but it's spelled the French way. Yeah. So Margaux. If you're only listening. But yeah, speakwithmargaux.com. You can find all that stuff.
Awesome. Okay, Margaux, thanks so much for joining us. And for everybody else, thanks for listening. We've got more amazing guests coming on, but this was definitely a highlight. This is an editor's pick, I think, for sure.
Oh, editor's pick of Grant's podcast too. Yes.
Okay, thanks so much, everybody.